In the scorched silence of a West Texas military training zone, a quiet woman in thrift store gear was about to be dismissed as just another amateur. What started as a wilderness endurance competition took a shocking turn when a sandstorm struck and 8 elite Marines vanished without a trace. Mara Holt wasn't your typical civilian volunteer. For 3 years since her father's death, she had spent her life as a small-town mechanic, known for weekend hikes through terrain that broke most people, carrying nothing but a hand-drawn map and decades-old survival knowledge. When she encountered the command team's refusal to launch immediate rescue operations, she had no idea she was walking into a 20-mile solo trek that would rewrite military protocol. Mara slipped past the perimeter fence that night with nothing but her father's faded map, a response that would lead to the most unlikely rescue mission in Pinewood Training Field history. What began as mockery and dismissal would become legend. The hardened Marines and decorated officers would never be the same after discovering that the woman they'd called Lost Cowgirl had tracked, rescued, and saved all 8 missing men, one by one, using nothing but instinct, compassion, and the quiet strength they never saw coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The heat settled over Pinewood Training Field like a held breath. Mid-August in West Texas meant the air itself became a weapon, dry, unforgiving, patient. The military compound sat 40 miles from anything resembling civilization, surrounded by scrubland that stretched toward mountains reduced to purple shadows by distance and haze. Mara Holt signed her name on the clipboard with 4 quick strokes. The registration staffer glanced at her signature, then at her face, then back to the paper. He didn't ask questions. He just clipped the numbered badge to her coat collar and waved her through. She wore a jacket 2 sizes too large, canvas faded to no particular color, patched at the elbows with squares of denim that didn't quite match. Her boots were scuffed leather, the kind sold at farm supply stores, laces replaced twice over. The rifle case slung across her back was wrapped in duct tape at both hinges, the kind of repair that spoke of function over pride. Around her, the other competitors arrived in clusters, Marines in crisp fatigues, civilian contractors with sponsored gear bags, endurance athletes wearing moisture-wicking fabrics and polarized sunglasses. They moved with the easy confidence of people accustomed to being watched, photographed, celebrated. Mara walked past them without catching anyone's eye. The main briefing tent was open on 3 sides, canvas stretched over aluminum frames. Folding chairs faced a podium where Major Alejandro Ruiz stood adjusting a microphone. Behind him, a projection screen cycled through images, desert terrain, GPS coordinates, drone footage of the training zones. Modern resilience, he began, his voice amplified and crisp, is built on technology, teamwork, and tactical superiority. This competition will showcase what the best can accomplish when preparation meets innovation. Mara found a seat in the back row. She set her case down gently, careful not to disturb anyone. The woman beside her, a contractor in tactical sleeves, shifted slightly away as if discomfort were contagious. Captain Miles Brecker stood near the podium, arms crossed, his posture radiating authority. He scanned the crowd with the practiced assessment of someone who'd spent years evaluating recruits. When his gaze passed over Mara, it lingered for a half-second before moving on. Dismissal without comment. Each team will be equipped with satellite communicators, GPS units, and emergency beacons. You'll navigate marked waypoints across 50 miles of terrain. Weather conditions are optimal. Support units will monitor your progress in real time. Someone near the front asked about water stations. Ruiz answered with precise coordinates and interval timing. Another questioned about medical evacuation protocols. Ruiz described helicopter response times measured in minutes. Mara pulled a folded map from her pocket, not the laminated kind distributed at registration, but something older, hand-drawn, creased soft from years of use. Pencil lines traced contours and water sources. Margin notes in tight handwriting warned of flash flood zones and unstable ground. The woman beside her glanced over. "That's not going to do you much good out there." Mara refolded the map without responding. Near the tent entrance, Sergeant Lena Parks stood observing. She held a tablet, but wasn't looking at it. Her attention kept drifting toward the back row, toward the quiet woman in the patched jacket. Something about the posture, the way she sat perfectly still, weight distributed evenly, hands resting loose, triggered a memory Park couldn't quite place. The briefing ended with applause and the scrape of chairs. Competitors filtered out toward the equipment stations, voices rising with excitement and bravado. Mara waited until the tent had mostly emptied before standing. She slung her case over one shoulder and walked out into the white glare of afternoon.
Behind her, she heard laughter. Not directed at her specifically, but in her wake. The kind of ambient mockery that didn't need a target to land. By the gear distribution tables, Corporal Dean Ryder was holding court. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the easy grin of someone who'd never doubted his welcome anywhere. He was demonstrating a tactical hydration system to two younger Marines, making a show of the quick-release valve. "This baby's got a 3-liter capacity and real-time filtration," he said. "NASA-level tech. You could drink straight from a mud puddle." One of the Marines spotted Mara approaching the adjacent table. He nudged Ryder and tilted his head. Ryder turned, sized her up in one sweep. "Hey, ma'am, Lost Cowgirl exhibits that way." He pointed vaguely toward the parking lot. The Marines laughed. Not cruel, exactly, just comfortable. Mara picked up a compass from the equipment table, checked its calibration against her own, then set it back down. She moved to the next table without acknowledging the comment. Brecker appeared beside Ryder, reviewing something on a handheld device. "Corporal, save the comedy for off hours." "Yes, sir." Ryder straightened, but the grin didn't fade. Brecker glanced toward Mara, who was now examining a first aid kit. "We get a lot of tourists signing up for these things. Civilians think they're tougher than they are until reality sets in." "Think she'll last the first night, sir?" Brecker didn't answer. He walked away, already focused on the next logistics check. Lena Park materialized at Mara's elbow. "You need anything? Backup gear?" Mara looked up, met her eyes. "I'm fine. Thank you." "You sure? Some of this terrain gets rough." "I know." Park hesitated. There was something in the calm of Mara's voice, not defiance, not bravado, just certainty. "You've done this kind of thing before?" "Something like it." Park wanted to ask more, but sensed the conversation was over. She stepped back, returning to her tablet, though her attention remained partly tethered to the woman in the patched jacket. The sun was beginning its long descent when the competitors assembled at the staging area. 50 people divided into mixed teams of 5. Marines paired with civilians, experience blended with ambition. Mara found herself assigned to Team 7, alongside Ryder and 3 others. A contractor named Voss, a National Guard sergeant, and a wilderness guide from Colorado. Ryder read the roster and laughed. "Well, this'll be interesting." The wilderness guide, a man named Keller, extended his hand to Mara. "Don't mind him. He's got all bark." Mara shook his hand once, brief and firm. Voss, the contractor, was already unpacking his gear, laying out each item with meticulous precision. GPS unit, satellite phone, solar charger, insulated sleeping system. "Everyone check your comms. We move at 0600. Ryder leaned toward Mara. "You gonna be able to keep up, ma'am? No shame in dropping out before we start." Mara adjusted the strap on her case. "I'll manage. That's what they all say." The evening briefing was short. Ruiz outlined the route one final time. Brecker emphasized safety protocols. Park distributed frequency cards for radio check-ins. As the meeting dispersed, Mara walked alone toward the perimeter of camp, where the desert began in earnest. She stood there for a long time, watching the light fade. The horizon stretched endlessly, broken only by the dark silhouettes of mesas. The wind carried the scent of creosote and dust. Behind her, the camp hummed with preparation, voices, Laughter, the metallic clink of equipment being tested and retested. Mara pulled out her father's map, studied the penciled lines in the failing light. His handwriting was small, careful. Notes about seasonal water flow, animal trails, the angle of sun through canyon walls. She traced one line with her finger, following it to a mark labeled High Ground, Storm Shelter. The sky to the west was clear, but the air tasted different. Metallic, heavy. She refolded the map and turned back toward camp. Dawn arrived without ceremony. The sky turned from black to gray to pale blue in the span of 20 minutes. Competitors gathered at the starting line, headlamps still glowing, breath visible in the cold pre-dawn air. Mara stood at the edge of Team 7, her gear packed light. No unnecessary weight. A single canteen, compass, knife, map, and a small medical kit wrapped in oilcloth. Her rifle case remained at base camp, checked into storage. Ryder was performing exaggerated stretches, playing to an audience of 2 younger Marines from another team. Remember, folks, hydration is information is power, therefore, water is power. Philosophy 101. The Marines laughed dutifully. Brecker moved through the crowd, clipboard in hand, checking badges and verifying team rosters. When he reached Team 7, he paused. "Holt?" He glanced at Mara, then at his list. "Yes, sir." "You're aware this is a 50-mile endurance course, full-terrain navigation?" "I am." "And you're confident in your equipment?" Mara gestured to her pack. "Yes, sir." Brecker looked unconvinced, but moved on. "Team 7, you're in the 3rd wave. Stay on frequency. Check in every 2 hours." Voss gave a thumbs up. Keller nodded. Ryder saluted with exaggerated precision. The first wave launched at 0600, the second at 0615. By the time Team 7 crossed the starting line, the sun had lifted fully above the eastern ridge and the temperature was already climbing. They moved in a loose formation, Voss taking point with his GPS unit. Ryder kept a running commentary, narrating terrain features and tactical considerations as if recording for a training video. Keller walked with steady efficiency, his gaze constantly sweeping. The National Guard sergeant, a quiet man named Torres, kept pace without complaint. Mara walked last, her steps deliberate, conserving energy.
2 hours in, Voss called for a hydration break. They gathered in the shadow of a limestone outcrop. Ryder passed around an electrolyte mix, offering first to Torres, then Keller, then making a show of holding the packet out toward Mara. "Sure you don't want the good stuff? This isn't grocery store Gatorade." Mara pulled a small metal tin from her pocket, opened it, and ate a pinch of what looked like seeds and dried fruit. "I'm good." "Trail mix from 1987? "Something like that." Voss checked his GPS, frowned, tapped the screen. "We're off course. Says we should have hit waypoint 2 already." Keller looked over his shoulder. "How far off?" "Maybe half a click northeast." Mara stood, brushed dust from her knees. She pointed southwest. "Water markers that way." Everyone turned to look at her. "Excuse me?" Voss's tone was polite but skeptical. "The second waypoint. It's at a dry creek bed. You can see the mesquite line from here." She gestured toward a barely visible change in vegetation, a darker green stripe against the pale desert scrub. Voss looked at his GPS again. "My GPS says..." "Your GPS has satellite lag. Wind's been pushing east all morning. Ground features don't lie." Ryder laughed. We've got a regular Sacagawea here." Keller squinted toward where Mara had pointed. After a moment, he nodded. "She might be right. I see the tree line." Voss hesitated, then adjusted their heading. "Fine, but if we end up lost, it's on record." They reached waypoint 2 11 minutes later, exactly where Mara had indicated. Voss said nothing. Ryder muttered something about lucky guesses. Torres caught Mara's eye and gave a single nod of acknowledgement. Keller fell into step beside her as they continued. You grow up out here? Not far. Your dad teach you that, reading terrain? Among other things. Keller waited for more, but Mara didn't elaborate. After a moment, he smiled faintly. Fair enough. By midday, the heat had become oppressive. The landscape shimmered, solid ground turning liquid in the distance. Voss insisted on following GPS coordinates despite Mara twice suggesting alternate routes with better shade coverage. Each time, Ryder backed Voss with theatrical confidence. GPS doesn't get tired, doesn't get sunstroke, doesn't make emotional decisions. It's literally science. They stopped for lunch in minimal shade, pressed against a rock face. Ryder produced a dehydrated meal pack that required boiling water. Voss had energy bars with precisely calculated calorie content. Torres ate mechanically, his expression unreadable. Mara sipped water and ate more from her tin. Ryder watched her with exaggerated curiosity. What is that really? Birdseed? Piñon nuts, dried mesquite pods, some chia. Where'd you even get that? Frontier Times gift shop? Made it. Of course you did. Ryder grinned at Voss. Next you'll be starting fires with sticks. Mara didn't respond. She was studying the sky to the west, where clouds were beginning to build. Tall columns of white against deep blue, their edges sharp and bright. Keller noticed her gaze. Weather looks clear. For now. Forecast said no rain for 3 days. Mara nodded, but didn't look convinced. They resumed hiking at 1300 hours. The terrain grew rougher, loose rock and sudden elevation changes. Voss's GPS led them up a steep ridge that required scrambling. Halfway up, Torres slipped, caught himself on an outcrop and tore open his knee. Mara was beside him immediately. She pulled antiseptic and gauze from her kit, cleaned the wound without commentary, and wrapped it with efficient precision. Torres looked at her. Thanks. Keep pressure on it for the next hour. Ryder helped Torres to his feet. You good to continue? Yeah, I'm fine. They crested the ridge and stopped. Below them, the desert opened into a wide basin dotted with Joshua trees and cholla cactus. In the distance, heat devils twisted across the flats. Voss consulted his GPS. Next waypoint is 8 kilometers. We'll hit it by 1600 if we maintain pace. Mara was still looking west. The clouds had grown taller, anvil-shaped, their undersides darkening. Something wrong? Keller asked. Storm coming. Ryder followed her gaze, shielded his eyes. Those clouds are miles away. We'll be at checkpoint 3 before anything reaches us. Maybe. Definitely. Ryder started down the slope. Come on, folks. Daylight's burning. As they descended, Lena Park's voice crackled over the radio. All teams, this is base. Weather advisory. Possible storm system developing west-southwest. Monitor conditions. Check in if visibility drops. Voss keyed his radio. Team 7 copies. Conditions clear at our position. Mara said nothing. She adjusted her pack and kept walking. By 3 p.m., the wind had changed. It came from the west now, gusting hard enough to kick up dust devils. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many minutes. The clouds that had been distant were now overhead, blotting out the sun. Voss finally looked concerned. Base, Team 7. Weather's deteriorating faster than predicted. Static crackled. Park's voice came through broken. Copy 7. All teams advised to seek shelter and await clearance. Repeat, shelter in place. Before Voss could respond, the wind hit. It came like a wall, sudden, absolute. Sand lifted from the ground in sheets, turning the air into a solid thing. Visibility dropped to nothing. The sky became brown, then gray, then an indistinct roar. Everyone down, Keller shouted, but his voice was immediately swallowed. Mara dropped to a crouch, pressed herself against a low boulder. She pulled her jacket over her head and closed her eyes. The wind screamed, tearing at fabric, scouring exposed skin. Through the chaos, she heard Ryder shouting coordinates, trying to guide the team together by GPS. His voice was panicked, raw. "Voss, Torres, sound off!" Responses came fragmented, directional sense obliterated by wind. Mara stayed low. She knew better than to move. Her father's voice, clear in memory. In zero visibility, staying still keeps you alive. Motion gets you lost. The storm lasted 40 minutes. It felt like hours. When the wind finally began to ease, Mara lifted her head. The air was still thick with suspended dust, visibility maybe 20 feet. Everything was coated in fine sand. Her clothes, her skin, the ground itself transformed into a uniform beige. "Keller?" she called out, her voice hoarse. "Here." He emerged from behind a larger rock formation, coughing. "You okay?" "Yeah." They found Torres next, curled against a dead tree. He was shaken but uninjured. Together, they searched for Voss and Ryder. Voss appeared after 5 minutes, stumbling through the haze. His GPS unit was cracked, screen dark. "Radio's dead. Can't raise base." "Where's Ryder?" Keller asked. They called his name, no response. Mara walked a slow circle, examining the ground. The wind had erased most tracks. But there, a scuff mark, then another, leading north. "He went this way," she pointed. "How can you tell?" Voss demanded. "Boot print, partial. There's another 10 feet ahead." They followed the trail for 100 yards before finding Ryder sitting against a rock, breathing hard. Relief flooded his face when he saw them. "Thank God. I thought I was alone out here." Voss tried his radio again. Nothing. "We need to regroup at the last checkpoint." Mara was scanning the horizon. Through gaps in the dust, she could see other teams scattered across the basin, small figures moving slowly. But to the northeast, where the terrain dropped into a series of canyons, she saw nothing. No movement. No signals. Team 4 was heading that direction, she said quietly. Keller checked his map. 8 Marines. Navigation drill. Voss shook his head. "They'll have the same protocol we do. Shelter and wait for extraction." "If their radios work." Mara kept staring northeast. Ryder got to his feet, still shaky. "Base will send helicopters. They've got protocols for this." But as they stood there, the wind began to pick up again. Not a storm this time, just the steady scouring blow of desert evening. The sky remained brown, visibility poor. Mara pulled out her father's map, studied it in the fading light. The canyon system to the northeast was marked with warnings. Narrow passages, flash flood risk, no aerial access. She looked up. "We should head back to base." "Finally something we agree on," Ryder muttered. They made it back to base by 1900 hours, guided more by luck and Mara's terrain sense than by any technology. The base was in controlled chaos. Teams straggling in, equipment being assessed, communication systems being rebooted. Brecker stood outside the command tent, coordinating with Ruiz and Park. His expression was tight. Team 7 approached, and he did a quick head count. "Everyone accounted for?" "Yes, sir," Voss reported. "Good. Get debriefed and stand by." Brecker was already moving toward another incoming team. Mara didn't follow her team to debriefing. She walked toward the communication tent where a technician was trying to restore satellite uplink. Park was there, reviewing status reports on a tablet. She looked up when Mara entered. "Team 4. Team 8. Have they checked in?" Park's expression answered before her words did. "No contact since 1445. "How many?" 8 Marines. Elite recruits." Park set down the tablet. "Helicopters can't fly in this visibility. Ground teams are staging but won't deploy until weather clears." Mara looked at the map spread across the table. 8 red markers showed last known positions. All of them were in or near the canyon system. "That terrain's bad for aerial search," Mara said. "I know. Radio signals bounce weird off those walls." "I know." They stood in silence for a moment. Park studied her. "You're thinking something." Mara traced a line on the map with her finger, following the canyon's natural drainage. Storm winds would have pushed them east. If they tried to shelter,
They'd look for rock overhangs, but the canyon walls are unstable on the western side. They'd drift toward here. She tapped a location. That's a guess. It's educated.
She left before Park could respond. Outside, the camp was settling into uneasy night. Generators hummed. Floodlights cast harsh shadows. Mara found a spot away from the main activity, near the perimeter fence, and sat with her back against a post. She pulled out her father's map again, though she didn't need to look at it. She knew every line, every notation. His handwriting in the margins, water flows where gravity and resistance meet. People move the same way. Ryder appeared, holding 2 water bottles. He offered her one. Thought you might need this. Thanks. He sat down nearby, not quite beside her. That was a hell of a thing out there. The storm. Yeah. You were pretty calm. Panicking doesn't help. Ryder nodded, looked at his hands. I was scared shitless, if I'm being honest. Mara didn't respond, but her silence felt less like judgment than space. Those Marines out there, Ryder said after a moment. Think they're okay? I don't know. But you have a theory? Mara looked at him. I think if someone doesn't go soon, they won't be. Ryder met his eyes. You really think you could find them? I think I'd try. He studied her for a long moment, then stood. Well, get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day either way. He walked back toward the tents, leaving her alone with the map and the wind. Mara sat there until the camp lights dimmed, until the conversations faded, until the desert around her became what it always was, silent, patient, indifferent. Then she stood, folded her map, and walked quietly toward the equipment shed. No one saw her go. The command tent smelled of stale coffee and tension. Brecker stood at the center table, arms crossed, jaw tight. Ruiz paced near the entrance, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped sentences to someone far away who controlled budgets and reputations. Visibility is still compromised, a logistics officer reported, pointing to satellite imagery on a laptop screen. Weather Service says clearing by 0800 tomorrow. That's 12 hours, Park said. She stood apart from the others, tablet in hand, data scrolling past unread. Those men have been out there for 6 hours already. They're trained Marines. They know how to shelter in place. We follow protocol. We don't risk more lives in zero visibility conditions. Protocol assumes functional communication. They're off-grid. No beacons, no radio. We don't actually know where they are. Ruiz ended his call and turned to face them. Regional Command agrees. We hold position until dawn, then deploy full aerial reconnaissance, followed by ground extraction. Sir, with respect, Park began. Sergeant, I understand your concern. Ruiz's tone allowed no argument. But we cannot justify sending rescue teams into conditions that grounded our helicopters. The optics alone. The optics of waiting. Park's words hung in the air. Brecker stepped forward. Sergeant Park, you're dismissed. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day either way. Park's jaw tightened, but she saluted and left. Outside, the wind had settled into a steady push from the west, carrying grit and the smell of creosote. The camp's floodlights created islands of white against surrounding darkness. Park walked past the medical tent, past the equipment depot, toward the communication station where topographic maps were still spread across folding tables. Mara was there. She sat alone, hunched over her father's map, a small LED lantern providing the only light. She had overlaid a clear plastic sheet and was marking wind directions with a grease pencil. Arrows showing prevailing gusts, eddies where canyon walls would create shelter. Park stopped in the doorway. You should be resting. Should be. Mara didn't look up. Park moved closer, studied the markings. What are you doing? Wind rose. Storm came from the southwest, pushed northeast. Anyone caught in open ground would drift with it, looking for cover. Mara traced a line with her finger. But the canyon system funnels wind, creates pressure zones. Smart Money says they'd angled toward the lee side. Here, she tapped a location. Problem is, that area is prone to rockfall. You're planning to go after them. It wasn't a question. Mara finally looked up. Someone should. Command says no. I know. Park pulled out a chair, sat down. For a long moment, neither spoke. The generator hummed outside. Someone laughed distantly, too loud, fueled by relief at being safe. You remind me of someone. The way you move, how you read terrain. Mara waited. I was extracted from a bad situation once. Deployment went sideways, got separated from my unit, injured. Ranger found me. Civilian contractor, technically, but he'd trained half the instructors on this base. Walked me out over 2 days through hostile territory. Never complained, never rushed. Just steady. Ellis Holt. You knew him? He was my father. Silence. Park processed this, pieces clicking into place. The calm demeanor, the instinctive navigation, the worn map with its precise, careful notations. He died 3 years ago. Flash flood rescue. Saved a trainee, didn't make it out himself. I heard. I'm sorry. He was the reason I stayed in. The reason I believed competence mattered more than eco. Mar nodded once, acknowledgement without sentiment. Park looked at the map again, at the careful markings. If you go out there, it's unauthorized. I can't approve it. I can't help you.
I know. You could get lost, die out there. I could, but you're going anyway. Mara began folding her map. Those men are alive, maybe injured, definitely scared. Every hour that passes makes rescue harder. Come dawn, the helicopters will search a grid pattern based on last known coordinates. But that assumes they stayed put. They didn't. They couldn't. The storm pushed them east, and survival instinct took them deeper into the canyons. You can't know that. No, but I'd bet my life on it. Mara stood, secured her pack. And I am. Park watched her prepare. She should stop this. Should call Brecker, enforce protocol. Instead, she pulled a small radio from her belt and set it on the table. This frequency is monitored every 4 hours, Park said, not looking at Mara. If someone were to transmit on it between monitoring windows, the signal wouldn't be logged. Mara picked up the radio, clipped it to her belt. There's a gap in the perimeter fence, south side, near the generator station. Security cameras don't cover that angle. Thank you. I'm not helping you. Park finally met her eyes. I'm just making observations. Mara shouldered her pack, grabbed her case. If they ask, they'll ask. I'll tell them you left without permission, that I tried to stop you. Park's expression was unreadable, but I'll also tell them where you were heading. Eventually. How long is eventually? 6 hours, maybe 7. Enough time for you to either find them or prove me wrong. Mara paused at the doorway. My father spoke about you, said you had good instincts. He taught me to trust them. Then trust this. They're alive, and they're waiting. Mara slipped into the darkness. Park stood alone in the communication tent, staring at the map with its careful notations. After a moment, she picked up her tablet and began documenting the evening's equipment inventory, slowly, methodically, taking far longer than necessary. Buying time. Outside, Mara moved through shadows between tents. The camp was quieter now, most personnel either resting or focused on equipment repairs. She reached the south perimeter where the fence line met the generator housing. The gap was there, just as Park had said, not large, but sufficient. She slipped through. The desert beyond camp was vast and empty. Moonlight filtered through lingering dust, turning the landscape silver and gray. Mara walked steadily northeast, her boots finding purchase on loose rock, her breathing even and controlled. Behind her, the camp lights faded. Ahead, the canyon system waited, dark cuts in the earth, shadows within shadows. She pulled out her map, oriented herself by stars, and continued walking. 3 hours into darkness, Mara stopped at a rock outcrop that matched a landmark on her father's map. She crouched low, studying the ground by penlight. The storm had scoured most detail away, but not all. There, a partial boot print, military issue, the tread pattern still visible in a pocket of sheltered sand. She marked the direction with a small cairn of stones, then continued. The night was cold now, temperature having dropped 30 degrees since sunset. Her breath formed brief clouds. Small creatures moved in the darkness, the scratch of a kangaroo rat, the flutter of a nighthawk. Life persisting in hostile space. Mara's father had taught her to walk at night by teaching her to listen first. He said, "Close your eyes," when she was 12, standing in darkness identical to this one. "Tell me what you hear." Wind over rock. The settling of cooled stone. Her own heartbeat. "Now tell me what you don't hear." That was the harder lesson. The absence of bird calls meant predators. The lack of insect noise meant poisoned ground. Silence had language if you learned to translate it. She listened now. Heard wind, stone, distance, but also something else. Faint, almost imperceptible. The echo of wind moving through a confined space. A canyon. She adjusted her heading 5 degrees east. An hour before dawn, she found the first real evidence. A piece of torn fabric caught on a cholla cactus. Olive drab, military issue. Fresh, the edges not yet sun-bleached. She was close. The sky began to lighten, black fading to deep blue. Mara reached the canyon rim as the first rays of sun broke the eastern horizon. Below, the canyon cut deep into the earth, walls of layered sediment rising 200 feet. The floor was narrow, shadowed, choked with boulders from ancient rockfalls. She studied the terrain, reading it like text. The western wall showed signs of recent collapse, fresh scree, lighter-colored stone exposed. The eastern wall was more stable, offering overhangs that could provide shelter. If they were smart, they'd have gone east. She found a game trail leading down, narrow, steep, but passable. She descended carefully, testing each foothold. Loose rock clattered away beneath her boots, the sound swallowed by the canyon's depth. At the bottom, the temperature was 10 degrees cooler. Sound behaved strangely here, bouncing, distorting. She moved slowly, scanning for signs. More boot prints, this time multiple sets, heading deeper into the canyon. A discarded water bottle, military issue, still half full, a sign of panic or injury. No one willingly abandons water. She followed the tracks. The canyon narrowed, walls closing in until her shoulders nearly touched both sides. Overhead, the strip of sky was pale and distant. Then the passage opened into a wider area where a seasonal stream had carved a bowl into the rock. And there, pressed against the far wall under an overhang, was Dean Ryder. He was half buried under debris from a collapsed shelter, branches and canvas that had failed to hold. His face was dust-kicked,
lips cracked, eyes closed. Mara approached carefully, checking for signs of life. His chest rose, shallow but steady. "Ryder." Her voice was quiet, but firm. His eyes opened, unfocused. He stared at her without recognition, then suddenly awareness flooded back. "Holt, don't move yet. Let me check for injuries." "What are you? How did you—" His voice was hoarse, words coming with difficulty.
Mara was already assessing. No obvious bleeding, but his left leg was pinned beneath a support beam. She tested it gently. He winced. "Probably sprained, maybe fractured. I need to move this." She unclipped her rifle strap, worked it under the beam, and used a rock as a fulcrum point. Basic leverage, the kind taught in every survival course. She lifted slowly, steadily. The beam rose. Ryder dragged himself free, gasping. Mara lowered the beam, then pulled out her canteen. Small sips. He drank, coughed, drank again. The others, they went deeper. Looking for water, maybe. I couldn't keep up. Shame colored his voice. "How many?" "7, all together when I last saw them." Mara pulled out her medical kit, cleaned the worst of his abrasions, wrapped his ankle with compression bandaging. "Can you walk?" "Maybe, with help." She fashioned a crutch from a sturdy branch, tested it for weight-bearing. "There's an overhang about 100 yards back. You'll shelter there." "What about you?" "I'm going after the others." Ryder grabbed her arm. "Holt, wait. He struggled with words. "Back at camp. The things I said. The way I— Doesn't matter now." "It does. I'm sorry." Mara looked at him. His usual cockiness was gone, replaced by something raw. She nodded once. "Save it for when everyone's out." She helped him to his feet, let him lean on her as they made their way back to the sheltered spot. She left him with half her water, her spare flashlight, and clear instructions. "Stay here. I'll mark the location for rescue. Don't try to move on your own." "How will they find me?" Mara pulled out a small mirror from her kit, positioned it to catch sunlight at a specific angle. "This will signal, and I'll leave markers." She turned to go. "Holt." She looked back. "Thank you." She didn't respond, just continued deeper into the canyon. The canyon twisted like a snake, each turn revealing new obstacles. Mara moved carefully, reading signs. More boot prints. Closer together now, the group was staying tight. Smart. A discarded energy bar wrapper, a mark scratched into stone, possibly intentional, possibly accidental. The sun climbed higher, heat radiating off the canyon walls. The strip of sky overhead turned from pale blue to harsh white. Mara rationed her water, taking small sips, knowing she'd need to make it last. She heard them before she saw them, voices echoing strangely through the narrow passage. She rounded a bend and stopped. 3 Marines sat in the shadow of a massive boulder. They looked up as she approached, expressions moving from confusion to disbelief. "Who the hell?" "Mara Holt, from the competition." She assessed them quickly. Dehydrated, exhausted, but mobile. "Are you injured?" The youngest, barely 20, name tag reading Sullivan, shook his head. "Just lost. Radio's dead. GPS is dead. We've been trying to find a way out since yesterday." "Where are the others?" "Split up," another Marine answered, older, with sergeant stripes. His name tag said Chen. 4 went ahead looking for water. We stayed here as a rally point." Mara pulled out her map, oriented herself. "There's no water ahead, not for miles." "We figured that out." Chen's voice was bitter. "Should have stayed put at the original site. Storm would have killed you there. Western wall's unstable." Mara studied the map. "The 4 who went ahead. When?" 3 hours ago. Maybe 4. Too long. In this heat, without water, 4 hours could mean the difference between rescue and recovery. Mara made a decision. "I need you 3 to head back the way I came. There's an injured man sheltered about a half-click back. You'll see the signal mirror. Stay with him. Rescue teams will find you by midday."
"What about you?" Sullivan asked. "I'm going after the others." Chen stood, wavered slightly. "We should stick together." "No time. They need water now." Mara pulled out her remaining canteen, handed it to Chen. "Ration this between the four of you. There's a fruit I marked along the way back. Prickly pear. You can eat it if you're careful." "You're giving us your water?" Chen looked at the canteen, then at her. "I travel lighter alone, and I know where to find more." That was only partially true. She knew where water might be, based on her father's notes about seasonal springs. Might wasn't certainty. Sullivan touched her arm. "Miss, we can't just—" "Yes, you can." Mara's voice was firm, but not unkind. "The best thing you can do is survive and tell rescue where I went. Can you do that?" Chen nodded slowly. "What do we tell them?" "That I continued northeast, following the canyon to where it branches. I'll leave markers, cairns, every 100 meters." She showed them how to stack the stones, 3 rocks in a specific pattern, simple but distinctive. "You really think you can find them?" Sullivan's voice was young, uncertain. "I think I'm going to try." Mara left them there, moving quickly now. Time was running out. The sun was fully overhead, temperature climbing past 100 degrees. In the narrow canyon, heat radiated from both walls, turning the passage into an oven.
She found the first cairn marker already in place. The missing 4 had left signs for the others. Smart, but it also meant they were moving in the wrong direction, chasing hope rather than reading terrain. The canyon branched. Mara paused, studying both options. The right fork angled upward, offering the promise of escape. The left descended, darker, less inviting. The boot prints went right, but Mara looked at the left fork, at the way shadow pooled there, at the different color of stone indicating different mineral content. She crouched, touched the ground. Slightly damp. Water went down, not up. She took the left fork. 50 meters in, the passage opened into a small grotto. Water seeped from a crack in the rock, collecting in a shallow depression. Not much, but enough. And there, collapsed near the pool, were 4 Marines. Mara ran. The first one she reached was unconscious, pulse thready but present. Heat stroke, severe dehydration. She wet her bandana, pressed it to his forehead, then carefully dribbled water onto his lips. The second Marine, a woman with captain's bars, was more alert. "Who? Water!" "Don't talk, drink slowly." Mara helped her sit up, controlled her intake. Too much too fast would make her sick. The other 2 were in similar condition, hovering between consciousness and collapse. Mara moved between them, administering water, cooling them with wet cloth, assessing injuries. The captain's name was Rivera. When she could speak again, her voice was rough. "You're from the competition, the civilian." "Mara Holt." "How did you find us?" "Followed the signs you left, then followed water instead of hope." Rivera tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "We screwed up." "You survived, that's what matters." Over the next hour, Mara stabilized all 4. She refilled her canteen from the seep, showed them how to collect more. She rationed the remaining food from her pack, dividing it evenly despite their protests. "You need to save supplies for yourself," Rivera argued. "I need you strong enough to walk out." Mara was already building a signal fire, using dried grass and wood she'd collected. The smoke would be visible from the air. She also built another cairn, larger this time, and placed bright strips of torn fabric beneath the stones, visible to aerial search. Rivera watched her work. "They said you were just some amateur, thrift store gear and luck." Mara didn't respond to that. She finished the signal markers and stood, dusting off her hands. 3 others are sheltered back in the main canyon, with 1 injured. If you follow the cairns I built, you'll reach them by nightfall. Stay together. Rescue will come by morning. "Where are you going?" "There's still 1 more missing. Lance Corporal Martinez. He separated from your group earlier." Rivera's face went pale. "Martinez has a heart condition. Not severe, but the stress, the heat, that I need to move fast." Rivera struggled to her feet, swayed. "Let me come with you." "No, you're needed here. Keep these 3 alive." "Holt?" Rivera's voice broke slightly. "Why are you doing this?" Mara paused at the grotto entrance. For a moment, she saw her father in similar light, similar circumstances, saw the quiet determination that had defined him. Because someone has to. She left them there, following a single set of boot prints that led deeper into the labyrinth of stone. Martinez's trail led to a narrow ravine where the canyon walls pressed so close that daylight barely penetrated. Mara moved sideways through the passage, pack scraping against stone. The air was cooler here, but also heavier, harder to breathe. She found him collapsed in a wider section, skin gray, breathing shallow and irregular. His pulse was erratic when she checked it. Heart condition, Rivera had said. The stress and heat had pushed him past his limits. Mara didn't panic. She'd seen this before. Her father rescuing a hiker whose heart had struggled with altitude and exertion. She elevated his legs, loosened his clothing, and wet his face and neck with the remaining water. "Stay with me," she said quietly. "Help's coming." His eyes flickered open. "Can't breathe right." "I know. Don't talk. Just focus on slow breaths." She stayed with him for an hour, monitoring his pulse, keeping him cool, rationing drops of water. When his breathing finally steadied, she helped him into a sitting position against the canyon wall. "Think you can walk if I support you?" Martinez nodded weakly. The journey back was slow. Mara took Martinez's full weight, guiding him step by careful step through the ravine. Her muscles burned, exhaustion pulling at every movement, but she didn't stop. One foot, then another. Simple mathematics of survival. They reached the grotto as the sun began its descent. Rivera and the others had stayed, building the signal fire larger. When they saw Mara supporting Martinez, they rushed to help. "You found him." Rivera's voice carried disbelief and relief in equal measure. "He needs rest and monitoring. Heart stressed but stable." They settled Martinez near the water source. The group was complete now. 8 Marines, all alive, all accounted for. Mara sat apart, back against cool stone, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion. Rivera approached her with water. "Drink, you've earned it." Mara drank slowly, then pulled out her father's map one last time. She marked their current position, traced the route back to camp. "Helicopters should be searching by now. The smoke will guide them here by nightfall." "What about you?" "I'll wait until you're picked up, then I'll head back."
Alone? I got here alone. Rivera sat beside her. "The others, Ryder, the ones you found first, they're going to tell everyone what you did." "Doesn't matter." "It matters." Rivera's voice was firm. "You saved 8 lives. That matters." Mara didn't respond. She was watching the sky, looking for the distant shape of rescue helicopters. They came as the light faded, 2 Black Hawks, rotors thundering through the canyon. The lead pilot spotted the smoke, circled once, then coordinated the extraction over radio. The Marines were lifted out in pairs, medical teams assessing each one as they boarded. Rivera went last. Before she climbed the rope ladder, she turned to Mara. "Come with us. I'll walk back. That's 20 miles. I know the way." Rivera hesitated, then saluted, crisp, formal, respectful. "Thank you, ma'am." Mara returned the salute quietly. The helicopter rose, banking east toward camp. The sound faded, leaving only wind and the crackle of dying fire. Mara sat alone in the grotto, gathering her strength for the walk back. She allowed herself this moment of stillness. Then she stood, shouldered her pack, and began the long journey home. The walk back took most of the night. Mara moved steadily, guided by stars and memory. Her body ached, feet blistered, throat raw despite the water she'd conserved, but she kept moving. Dawn found her on the canyon rim, looking down at where she'd descended hours ago. The desert stretched before her, familiar and vast. In the distance, she could see the lights of base camp, small and precise against the landscape. She descended the final slope as the sun broke the horizon. Base camp was awake when Mara walked through the perimeter. News of the rescue had spread. 8 Marines found alive, brought back by helicopter, all stable. The camp hummed with relieved energy. Mara entered quietly, heading toward the equipment shed to return her gear. Brecker found her there. He stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. "Holt." She turned, waited. "You went out without authorization, violated direct orders." "Yes, sir." "You risked your own life, put yourself in danger." His voice was measured, but something underneath was shifting. "Yes, sir." Brecker stepped closer. "Those 8 Marines, they told us what you did, how you found them, how you kept them alive." Mara set down her pack. "They survived because they were trained well. They survived because of you." Brecker's voice cracked slightly. "Rivera said you gave them your water, your food, that you walked 20 miles alone after everyone else was extracted. Someone needed to." Brecker was silent for a long moment. Then he saluted, slow, deliberate, holding it until Mara returned it. "Your father would be proud." Mara's composure flickered. "You knew him?" "He trained me, 15 years ago. Survival course. Toughest instructor I ever had. He taught me that real strength doesn't announce itself. It just shows up when needed." Outside, Ruiz was attempting damage control, coordinating with public affairs. Park approached Mara as she left the equipment shed. "There's going to be questions, interviews. They'll want statements. I'm leaving." "Mara." "I did what needed doing. That's enough." Park understood. She pulled something from her pocket, a small brass compass, worn smooth. She said I'd know when to pass it forward, but I think it should stay with you. Mara looked at the compass, recognized her father's initials scratched faintly on the back. Her fingers closed around it. "Thank you." She walked toward the parking area where her truck waited. Behind her, she heard voices rising, Marines returning from medical checks, Ryder among them. He was moving with a crutch, but insisted on standing. "Holt!" he called out. She stopped, turned. He approached, the other Marines gathering behind him. Sullivan, Chen, Rivera, Martinez supported between 2 others. 8 faces, exhausted but alive. Ryder extended his hand. "I was wrong about you. We all were." Mara shook his hand once, firm and brief. Rivera stepped forward. "We want to make sure people know what you did. You're alive. That's what matters. But take care of each other." Mara looked at each of them. "That's all I ask." She walked to her truck, climbed in, and drove away as the sun climbed higher, turning the desert gold. 3 months later, a small ceremony was held at Pinewood Training Field. Mara wasn't there. A plaque was installed near the main entrance, brass polished to a mirror shine. It read simply, "For the one who walked alone." Lena Park stood before it with Brecker at her side. New recruits passed by, some pausing to read, most not understanding. "Think she'll ever come back?" Park asked. "No, she doesn't need to." Nix, the drone operator, had updated the base's navigation and survival training protocols. In the digital manual, under advanced tracking techniques, a new module appeared. Holt method, natural navigation and terrain reading. Ryder returned to active duty, his swagger replaced by something quieter. He kept a small stone from the canyon in his pocket, a reminder. Rivera requested transfer to search and rescue training. In her application, she cited renewed understanding of what real leadership actually means. In a small town in rural Texas, Mara returned to her work as a mechanic. She spent weekends hiking, her father's map always in her pocket, adding her own notes to his, training herself not for recognition, but for the next time someone needed help and no one else would come. One afternoon, a young woman appeared at her garage, military bearing, nervous energy. "Are you Mara Holt?" "I am."
I'm reporting to Pinewood next month, infantry training. I read about what you did, the rescue. The young woman hesitated. They say you learned from your father. I was wondering if you'd be willing to teach me some of what he taught you. Mara studied her, saw genuine desire to learn, not glory-seeking. What's your name? Kessler, Sarah Kessler. Mara wiped her hands on a rag, nodded toward the open desert beyond her garage. We start at dawn. Bring good boots and an open mind. Leave the ego at home. Yes, ma'am. As Kessler left, Mara looked at the compass Park had returned to her, then at the distant mesas turning purple in the afternoon light. Her father's voice, clear in memory. Strength isn't about noise or pedigree. It's about showing up when no one's watching, when no one expects you, when you're the only one left who will. She pocketed the compass and returned to work. The desert wind moved through the open garage door, carrying the scent of creosote and endless sky. Somewhere out there, someone would need help. Someone would be lost. And when that time came, there would be people ready, people who learned that quiet competence outweighs loud confidence, that legacy lives in action, not words. The plaque at Pinewood gathered desert dust, the brass dulling slightly, but new recruits still paused before it, still wondered, still asked questions about the quiet woman who walked into the storm when everyone else said to wait. And in the asking, the lesson lived on.